Hello, I'm Tara Chandrasekhar. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist at Duke Health.
Hi, I'm Sam Brandsen. I'm an autism researcher with the Duke Autism Center.
We're going to share a few slides with you on neurodiversity in the classroom to help you think about how to support your neurodivergent students. We're going to cover an overview, give you some definitions of the terms neurodiversity and some descriptions of autism and ADHD, and hone in on particular interventions that you can make in the classroom to increase inclusion. And we'll close with some resources. We want to note that this presentation is framed from a strengths-based perspective. We really see tremendous value in uplifting the lived experiences and strengths and contributions that our neurodivergent students make to Duke University. And we think it's important to highlight those aspects as we talk through different conditions that fall under the realm of neurodiversity. So what is neurodiversity? Neurodiversity is an inclusive term that describes the different ways that our minds work. As you can see from the figure, neurodiversity can include a number of different conditions, including autism spectrum, ADHD, mental health conditions, learning disabilities, and a variety of other things. And going back to our strengths-based approach, we want to highlight that each of these conditions is noted for particular strengths, such as hyperfocus, authenticity, creativity, and so on. We also want to highlight that neurodiversity looks at a whole person. And so there may be particular challenges that our individual students face as they navigate Duke that are viewed through the intersectionality of neurodiversity.
Now we wanted to introduce one specific type of neurodivergence, which is autism. Autism has three key domains, and the first one is social communication differences. So going back to the strengths-based perspective, these social communication differences can bring certain strengths, such as being a straightforward communicator. Generally speaking, autistic individuals may also think outside the box or bring a unique perspective. And many autistic individuals are also very consistent in their behavior across a variety of settings and tend to be quite honest. Sometimes these social communication differences can also bring challenges in the classroom setting. For example, autistic students may find it more difficult to pick up on hints or indirect communication that their professor or classmates are using, and often may feel isolated or stigmatized because of their social communication differences. Social communication differences can also encompass differences in eye contact, body language, facial expressions, and quite a variety of other traits as well. Another key domain of autism is intense interest and fondness for routine. So autistic individuals can often really thrive with predictability and structure and knowing what to expect. And sometimes we can have a really passionate interest about our favorite topics to the point where it can be really contagious, or that enthusiasm can also be shared or spread to others in a really positive way. One of the challenges that can come is if there's a sudden change in routine, that can be especially challenging for autistic individuals. So if the class changes at the last minute, or if it unexpectedly gets started or ends at a different time, those sort of changes can be especially challenging for those who are autistic. And the third domain is sensory processing differences, which we'll get into a little bit more on the next slide. But these essentially refer to differences in how autistic individuals perceive sound, light, touch, and other sensory input. So one trait that is often associated with sensory processing differences is stimming. Stimming is a repetitive movement that can be rocking, hand flapping, repetitive noises, really any kind of repetitive movement or behavior. It could even be something like twirling with one's hair or jewelry repetitively. And this can often bring a lot of different benefits. It can reduce anxiety, it can bring enjoyment and relaxation, and it can also help autistic individuals with focusing. So even though fidgeting has traditionally often been perceived to mean that the student isn't paying attention, it could actually mean that the individual is doing what they need to do to focus and be engaged as well as they possibly can. Some of the challenges that can come with sensory processing differences, if the environment isn't set up to be well adapted to it, is sensory overwhelm. So if someone is very sensitive to sound or light, they might find bright overhead lights or background noises to be exceptionally overwhelming, just in the way that many people would find it to be overwhelming if you were bombarded with lighter noise beyond your comfort threshold.
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, is another form of neurodivergence that we would like to highlight. And our students with ADHD are often creative, spontaneous, high energy, resilient, and engaging. And we really enjoy the many contributions that they bring to our community. ADHD is not a condition solely for children. And up to 5% of adults continue to meet criteria for ADHD as they move into adulthood. We see our students sometimes struggle with executive functioning. College requires a different level of organization and is often much less structured than other educational experiences prior to college. So students may have to juggle a number of different tasks, keep track of many deadlines, and figure out how to prioritize different assignments, projects that are short-term or long-term. They may also be drawn towards things that they're more interested in and want to spend time on those high reward tasks. And it may be difficult to complete things that are perceived to be a bit more tedious. Students can also experience some differences in the way that they make decisions. They may be viewed as impulsive or restless, and that may impact relationships or academic performance. But when our students are able to focus on things that they really care about, you often see high degrees of hyperfocus rather than distractibility or inattention.
We also wanted to note how neurodivergent students can offer us insight not only in how we can best accommodate those who are neurodivergent, but also how we can create classrooms which are better designed for all students. And I wanted to first preface it with the fact that even if our accommodations really were only to benefit neurodivergent students, I think it would still absolutely be worth it, because if we really believe in the value of every student, then even an accommodation which benefits just one student is still worth it, because we want that student to be part of our classroom. And I think that's something that can sometimes get left out of the discussion on inclusion, and that just as it's good for autistic students and neurodivergent students to be included, their peers will also benefit from their inclusion, because these students are bringing something unique to offer to the classroom. But even beyond this, a lot of accommodations that are especially important for neurodivergent students can benefit everyone, even if it's not to the same degree. So creating a sensory friendly classroom where there's not background noises or where there's not distracting overhead lighting can really help most students focus or feel more comfortable, even if they don't have a sensory processing difference. Some accommodations can also really overlap with needs for other marginalized groups. So for example, avoiding or clarifying if you do use phrasing that is incorrect or that's sarcastic or that requires reading between the lines, that can be very helpful for those of us who are literal communicators. In some cases, it may also be helpful for those who are in the process of learning English as a second language or a third language. And also, we just want to note that neurodivergence is very common. So around 11% of students are neurodivergent. So this is a pretty significant portion of the student population that can be benefiting from these.
We are working on creating a booklet that provides many examples of how to modify classroom structure to be more inclusive. And the domains that we're focusing on are related to sensory processing, the structure of a course, how to think about group work, and lastly, but probably most importantly, how to foster a sense of belonging for our students. We will be happy to share this resource widely once it's finalized, but briefly, the resource takes into account principles of universal design in attempting to minimize barriers to participation and build in increased communication around what are expectations, what are particular roles that students are expected to fulfill, and information provided through multiple domains, including spoken out loud and writing, and available to students outside of the classroom. And finally, we want to highlight that there are many folks at Duke who are really committed to this work. including the Neurodiversity Connections Working Group that we represent, our students who are involved in a student group called the Clubhouse, and then many different offices on campus that are dedicated to serving students. And finally, our student allies in the Duke Disability Alliance. Thanks so much for your attention. Please reach out if you have questions.